We are live on the internet. In today's episode, I will be covering the latest developments on cannabis rescheduling. I'll be sharing some of the reactions I've seen on the topic of cannabis rescheduling. We'll also dive into a DUI scandal that has shaken Illinois, and we'll explore why cannabis-focused police raids continue across the state of Illinois. We'll have updates from other states and possibly more in this show. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in live. It's just about 4:20 p.m. here in Illinois. Beautiful day here, beautiful fall-like weather on this August 29th, 2025. The viewers are rolling in. This show is live to tape, so I'll mention this a few times throughout the stream, but we will be taking callers during this episode. That way, the reason I'm mentioning it a few times through the stream is because, again, we are live. So if you're joining in midstream, you'll know that you can jump in and join the conversation. Yep, you heard that correctly. You can call in by going to colememo.com/live. There's a button on that page that says, click here to join me on the live stream. And that's how you join. It's super, super easy to join. Video is optional. You're welcome to join audio only. If you don't want to join or call in, you can always drop your comments because we are live and I can display them on screen. So if you haven't already, comment below. We can display your comment, and I'd love to hear what you think about the subject matter we discuss today. If you're catching this show later and wondering how to catch the show live, I'd say the best way to do that is to go over to colememo.com/YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you never miss a stream. This podcast is also available for streaming on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcasting platforms, or at colememo.com. To support the show, I'd say smash that like button. It's one of the best ways to support the show. It's free. Dropping a comment helps. Sharing it with your friends is amazing. You can also support the show financially at colememo.com/support or colememo.com/Patreon. This show is brought to you by listeners like you. You can also sign up for email updates at colememo.com/subscribe. I'll share news, updates, and upcoming show information every so often. Nothing spammy. So if you want to subscribe and stay in the loop, colememo.com/subscribe. That's a new one, folks. I've not started an email list yet, but hey, we might just do that. Folks, we've got just a little bit over 10 people tuning in. So if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop your comments below. We can interact with you as the show goes on. So folks, it's time for another episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chung, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
All right, folks, in our first story of the day, we're going to be talking about a story published by ABC7 Chicago. It's a follow-up expose that was published on August 16th, 2025. A little bit behind on news. Took a little bit of a break, but that's why we're bringing it to you here live on the show. Be sure to subscribe to the show at colememo.com/subscribe if you haven't already, to never miss a news update. Once again, this was a follow-up expose by ABC7 Chicago, where they reported that Injustice Watch, who I believe is an outlet, unveiled fresh evidence of fake science at the University of Illinois Chicago's now closed analytical forensic testing laboratory. And this is all following the initial investigative coverage by ABC7's I-Team. So we might show you that report here in a little bit. You might be familiar with it. This is not the first report on this lab. And we'll, like I say, talk about that a little bit more. So the documents obtained through internal memos and emails suggest that the lab produced unreliable THC test results, specifically failing to differentiate Delta-9 THC, which many people refer to as the intoxicating form, regulated under Illinois DUI law from other compounds. So they weren't able to differentiate the compounds, a problem that allegedly was known to lab personnel as early as 2021. And these inaccuracies, according to the reporting, have cast doubt on thousands of cannabis related DUI convictions, prompting police and prosecutors across the Chicago metro area to reassess potentially affected cases. Some, like in DuPage County, have already been dismissed. Some of this might sound really familiar because last year I talked about exactly this. ABC7, they did break a story related to this lab, but it was not related to the subject matter we're discussing today or that we'll be watching reporting on today. They first did some reporting on December 5th, 2024, regarding some of the flawed results. And I believe that had to do with blood. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the flawed results with urine. And to do that, I'm going to give a quick background on what a per se limit is. And in order to do that, I'm going to play a clip from the podcast in the past, episode 97, where we covered exactly this topic. And let's take a look, see, and learn what is a per se limit. And then we're going to watch the findings. We're going to watch ABC7's findings on this UIC lab. Let's press play so that my face doesn't look like this any longer. That was shared with me. But before I do that, a little bit of background. In case you're wondering what a per se limit even is, let's talk about how it became a part of Illinois law. So in 2016, Illinois decriminalized small amounts of cannabis under the 2016 law. Those caught up with up to 10 grams of marijuana faced fines of $100 to $200. Individual municipalities could add to the fines or implement other penalties, such as requiring offenders to attend drug treatment. I think some of those provisions still exist today. Citations were reportedly set to be automatically expunged twice a year on January 1st and July 1st. Individual municipalities could add to the fines or implement other penalties, such as requiring offenders to attend drug treatment. Once again, I believe we've seen that continue. I didn't mean to mention that twice, but it is important to mention that I believe the requirement to attend drug treatment is still required. If you would like to see at least one story I'm aware of where something like that was required, you can go to thecolememo.com/isitlegal. David's story, he got in trouble and was required to go to a sort of drug treatment. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it sounded like this. The 2016 law that we were just talking about also changed the state's zero tolerance policy for driving under the influence. In doing so, Illinois created a per se limit. A per se limit is the concept that allows the state to assume you're guilty of driving under the influence, even if the state is unable to prove impairment. In the past, Illinois Representative Bob Morgan has indicated that the Illinois threshold is arbitrary, saying, quote, "We literally made it up." Let's watch that clip before we go any further. I am about to share my screen for folks that are watching this version of the podcast, this episode of the podcast, rather.
There's still an element, and it continues to be a major problem of intoxication, driving while intoxicated with cannabis, because we don't have a .08, nor do we have technology to even enforce that if we did have any kind of standardization. So there's no per se limit. Illinois actually has a per se limit, but we literally made it up. We made up the per se limit. It's not based on 50, 60 years of driving while intoxicated with alcohol that we know .08 is the average. And yet we all know somebody who's 90 or 100 pounds who drinks one beer and can't drive. And we also know people who drink 12 packs and are just fine because the body absorbs alcohol differently. Same with cannabis. Some people that are regular users are not necessarily impaired, even if they're using quite a bit.
So, I mean, Illinois Representative Morgan said it himself. Some people could be, thought to be impaired, even though they're not. I've come under the understanding that these arbitrary thresholds have created complications for cannabis users in Illinois. That's why I started off the show saying if you use cannabis at all, you should be mindful of this. Particularly during traffic stops is when you need to be mindful of this. When you are operating the motor vehicle, many individuals find themselves being charged with intoxication despite not being impaired. From what I've been able to gather, beyond the low threshold levels, the real concern is the methodology that's practiced by one of the only labs in the state of Illinois that I've come to understand is certified to perform this type of testing in response to the change in the DUI statute in 2016. So let's pull up the presentation that I saw. Now, I'd like to reiterate, I saw this presentation. I didn't make this presentation. And so as a result, I'm going to be going through my notes. Okay, so you can check out that presentation. Really proud of it. I think I did a great job presenting on this subject. Again, that's episode 97 of the Cole Memo, and this is where I actually broke some of the details on this. To be candid, it hasn't been until now that I've seen anybody else report on this specific subject matter. And so let's watch the report from ABC7. Before we do that, we are live, and so people are commenting, and I want to acknowledge their comments. You can also call into the show at colememo.com/live. But we've got some comments in, so let's take a look. So this comment says, yeah, court appointed and required programs are good moneymakers. Yeah. Like I say, if you go to colememo.com/isitlegal, it sounds like some of those court appointed programs are still required in some instances with cannabis related offenses, which seems interesting. Like, for example, the story that I referenced was a person that got in trouble for growing cannabis, which was their legal right as a medical cannabis patient, apparently, even though they got in trouble for it still. Like I say, very interesting story, but they were required to go to a substance abuse program. And it's like, hold on a second. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that in certain cases with alcohol, you might be required to go, for example, you might be required to go to a substance abuse program, but it just stood out to me as weird because growing cannabis doesn't, to me, indicate a substance abuse issue. It indicates a knack for growing plants, but that's maybe just my perspective. We got another comment in from our friend Penny Hartz. They say that clip that should be used to get any and all cannabis DUIs dismissed. And I believe they're referring to the one from Representative Morgan, who said, and I quote, the per se limit for cannabis, we literally made it up. That was the quote, which was, it's always super interesting to hear that clip. I like to play it a lot. Speaking of clips, let's watch this reporting. Like I say, this is the first time I've seen anybody report on these details. Take note of some of the names that are mentioned in this report. We're gonna dig into those names after we watch this report. Let's take a look.
Well over a year ago, the ABC7 team started digging into accusations of a lab scandal at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Our exclusive reporting uncovered serious questions about a likely flawed test that now has thousands of marijuana DUI convictions in question. Police and prosecutors are still scrambling, trying to determine which cases are damaged and which defendants may be wrongly locked up. And the fallout continues today as new evidence and accusations of fake science at the lab are coming to light.
I know that I was not under the influence that morning.
Corey Lee still sits behind bars, convicted of driving under the influence of cannabis. In 2018, he was involved in a crash in rural Illinois that killed a father and his adult son. Lee's case, along with many others, were charged based on blood test results from UIC's AFTL lab.
It's really simple. Fraudulent science equals fraudulent convictions. Step up to the plate, release the people that have been convicted based on this rogue lab, do the right thing.
After an extensive investigation by the I-Team, internal memos and emails revealed potentially flawed test results from the lab, generating inaccurate numbers of a cannabis molecule called THC. The tests were used to determine whether someone was illegally driving under the influence of marijuana. The lab was also accused in court filings of covering up the flaws in testing methods since 2021.
This is what I would describe as a festering scandal. the consequences are great. You know, there's people who are charged with felonies, their life is certainly affected.
Following our reporting, the DuPage County State's Attorney announced the dismissal of more than a dozen cases involving the faulty tests. Other county prosecutors and police departments in the metro Chicago area are now reviewing cases, including Cook County. Recently, the university's law firm released results of an internal investigation absolving the lab and UIC of wrongdoing, concluding the lab's methods were, quote, at all times appropriate and met accepted scientific standards, and that none of the analysts, quote, knowingly provided false testimony. But the report also says the lab's methods should have been modified to distinguish between two related forms of THC. Officials with UIC have repeatedly declined interviews or comment requests from the I-team. ABC7's chief legal analyst says those investigation results are not an exoneration, especially with a key figure at the lab, Jennifer Bash, declining interviews by UIC's lawyers.
First, will there be a criminal penalty here? Will someone be found to have deliberately misled somebody else? Unclear from this report. It didn't find that someone had misled, but it also doesn't rule out that possibility, and I could see further inquiry there. The other question is, could somebody, the lab, be held liable in negligence for what happened here?
Now, the I-team contacted forensic scientist Jennifer Bash, whose test methods at the lab and her testimony as an expert witness in many DUI cases are now being called into question. She declined an on-camera interview, but said in a written statement in part, quote, I was very disappointed when I read the article and saw it was filled with inconsistencies and falsehoods. Acting in good faith, I provided detailed responses to questions concerning the science behind the testing I conducted. Those responses have either been distorted or ignored. Throughout my career, I have presented facts based on sound scientific principles. While I understand that disagreement among experts is not uncommon in the courtroom, a differing scientific opinion should never be equated to dishonesty. The testing methods I used and the results obtained were scientifically sound, and I am unaware of any ANAB findings to the contrary. Bash is still certified by the American Board of Forensic Toxicology and can still testify in Illinois courtrooms. And joining me now is reporter Maya Dukmasova with Injustice Watch, the Chicago-based nonprofit journalism organization, which has just released its own extensive investigation into the lab. Maya, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very extensive report here, and a large portion of your report centers on another marijuana test at the lab that Ms. Bash involvement in creating and overseeing that test, and her expert testimony in the courtroom. So what are some of the highlights?
So there were two major issues with the testing at the lab. On the one hand, there was the approach to testing urine in DUI cannabis investigations, which purported to be able to show whether someone was high while driving based on their urine. And this is scientifically impossible because THC, the active drug compound that the Illinois DUI law says you have to find in people's blood or bodily fluids, THC is not actually found in urine. So the lab performed complicated scientific analysis in order to essentially convert the metabolites of THC, which show up in urine for days or weeks after last use, back into the parent drug, quantify that, and then say this is how much THC the person had in their system at the time of driving. So that was one thing. And the second issue was what ABC7 had reported previously, which is that the lab's machines weren't really set up to tell the difference between Delta-9 THC, which is the thing prohibited by Illinois DUI law, and Delta-8 THC, which is not illegal and is a different compound. So in 2021, they appeared to have found out that their machines are not set up to tell the difference, and then didn't do anything to fix the method. And the internal UIC investigation report confirms that this is what happened.
Didn't do anything to fix the method for years at
Correct.
that point. Right.
Continued testing, continued issuing lab reports. And in 2024, after the university shut down human testing at the lab for unrelated reasons, for financial reasons, essentially, not because of the faulty science happening there. In 2024, they ran a test again and saw, yep, indeed, our machines are not able to tell the difference between Delta-9 THC and Delta-8 THC, even though the Illinois DUI law is tied specifically to Delta-9. And essentially, they issued a letter to a bunch of state's attorney's offices saying, we had this problem going back this many years, potentially impacting test results, but they have not issued any amended lab reports or contacted a single defendant whose body fluids were tested to notify them that the results may have been inaccurate.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. What does this mean for those thousands and thousands of cases that are, in the court system right now, or have been adjudicated even, with test results that are called into question?
So it's unclear because no one even knows exactly how many cases there are, how many convictions there are. This would require a detailed data analysis that has to begin at the University of Illinois Chicago, because they're the ones that have all the lab reports with all the names of the people whose body fluids were tested. So defense attorneys who are working on trying to reverse wrongful convictions or investigate potentially wrongful convictions tied to the lab, they estimate that there are hundreds of people in the state who are still convicted based on the evidence from this lab. And you got to understand, most DUIs are misdemeanors. Most misdemeanor cases are resolved through plea deals. People hear that, oh, the lab report came in, it said that you were over the legal limit, and they take a plea and they move on with their lives. It's very, the maximum prison time for a misdemeanor case is a year. But you found one individual who is serving time for a felony DUI because of the deaths involved. I found another individual who is doing 31 years because he was actually prosecuted for murder and aggravated DUI based on the accident he caused, when all the evidence pointed to the fact that he was having a psychotic break due to a mental health issue.
Right.
So it remains to be seen how many people exactly are still incarcerated or who are still carrying convictions on their record tied to this lab. But right now, the buck is stopping at the University of Illinois.
And finally, I mean, there are real questions out there still about oversight of the lab, and any real meaningful oversight that could have stopped this or could stop this from happening again going forward.
Yeah, one of the shocking things in investigating the story is the total lack of forensic science oversight in our state. And Illinois is pretty typical for the United States. The only place that has actual forensics oversight in this country is Texas. But in Illinois, we have a forensic science commission that was created by Governor J.B. Pritzker a couple of years ago. And it is housed inside the Illinois State Police and doesn't have any actual power to investigate or discipline forensics labs.
And it's really
Labor Day weekend is full
unfortunate.
of fun, including
Whoops, because that report ended there, at least on the online version. So that's basically what we had for that report. It looked like there was a little bit more to that discussion. I would have loved to hear about oversight. If anybody has seen the full report and knows more about what they said there at the end, please drop your comment below. I'd love to learn more. We got some questions and comments in as we were going through this, and like I said, I wanted to drill down on some names that you may have noticed from the reporting. So somebody said, considering the differences between Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 11 made by the liver when consuming Delta 9 are not distinguishable by the metabolite given current methods. Yes, exactly. And that is what I broke down in episode 97 of the podcast, which I mentioned at the top of this show. Like I said, that was the first time, or I should say up until now, I've never heard anybody report on these details and how, like, the lab interprets things and what all of this means actually in practice. So I give a presentation. If you go to colememo.com and look up episode 97, you can watch that. It's episode 97, Illinois Cannabis Per Se Limit and Impossible Standard as Interpreted. I'll have that linked in the show notes. So if you're listening to this episode, it's episode 228. You can see episode 97 is linked right there at the top. And basically, in this report that we just watched by ABC7, they mentioned that something to the effect of complex science was performed on the urine, or on the biosamples, if you will. In the case of urine, which is what episode 97 was about, from what I understand, and from according to the court testimony that I read, the lab was performing electrolysis on the urine. So they were literally converting, I believe it was conjugated THC to free THC. But don't quote me on that because it's been a while since I had to learn all of those details and about how the body metabolizes THC. And I know some of your eyes may be glossing over right now, but it actually is super interesting because basically THC should not be in your urine unless, if I recall correctly, you're having some like major organ failure. for the most part, your body actually converts the THC into another form, and so you'll never actually have THC in your blood, and that is all that is all the more reason that these lab tests are flawed. So according to what I found, so we're gonna dig into more here. Thank you to the folks that are dropping comments. Christopher Brady, you are hilarious. So just to drill down into some names, so Jennifer Bash from the lab. Let's Google their name. Somebody brought this to my attention on the podcast in the past. If you look up Jennifer Bash Cannabis Advisory Board, so Jennifer Bash was the forensic toxicologist, and you can see that from one of the first results here. But if you go down here, you can see there's this listing for Cresco Yeltra. Cresco Yeltra, which Cresco, that sounds familiar, but let's look at it. So, and I saw Jennifer Bash's name on this. So if you click yes, I'm over 21, I'm getting into Cresco Yeltra's website. And if you scroll down, you'll see Jennifer Bash's name here. And apparently she is the senior analytical forensic toxicologist specialist with the Analytical Testing Laboratory at the University of Illinois, Chicago College of Pharmacy, which sounds a lot like what we were just talking about, or what ABC7 was just talking about. She apparently at the time of this writing was working with the Illinois Department of Agriculture to help solidify the sampling and testing standards for the state's program. If you're wondering what Cresco Yeltra is, I'm going to click this icon here in the top left-hand corner, and it says that Cresco Yeltra is dedicated to providing the patients of Pennsylvania medical marijuana program with the highest quality, most precisely dosed medical marijuana products. Not trying to give them free advertising, but it's just interesting that apparently she has some, or had some, involvement in the cannabis industry. Just a little bit of a mention on Jennifer Bash. Another name that you may have seen in the reporting on this subject was Dr. Marilyn Hustis, and I'm Googling that name right now. And if you see, the top result is Dr. Marilyn Hustis on Smart Approaches to Marijuana's website. And from what I can gather, Dr. Marilyn Hustis is a part of, or at least works with, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which, if you didn't know, is a group that actually works to oppose cannabis legalization. Now, Christopher Brady just commented and said, "Ooh, Sam." The reason I find this notable is because even this woman from Sam, according to the testimony that I share in episode 97 that you can listen to at thecolememo.com, which is linked in the show notes, even this person from Sam, who does not believe cannabis should be legal, said, boy, what this lab from University of Illinois in Chicago is doing is, I believe she said something to the effect of, not something I've ever seen done before. Which I found notable. I found that very notable to share. So if you go back and listen to episode 97, you'll hear me read the testimony from this person. And like I say, I think that all of those things are super, super notable to mention with regard to that entire topic. So folks, I've been talking about this for a moment. Drop your comments below. I'd like to know what you think about this subject. Like I say, it's really nice to see this reporting. If you'd like to check out the report that we watched in this episode, I'll have that linked in the show notes. Definitely check out episode 97 for some more information. And Christopher Brady says, go wash your mouth out after talking about Sam. Well, folks, please drop your comments in. We're going to keep the show rolling. We've got some things to talk about with regard to the rescheduling of cannabis. We're going to be getting an update from our friends in Texas and just a little bit more. All of that right here in this episode of the Cole Memo. All right, Austin, welcome back. Remind our listeners who you are and where they can find you online.
I'm Austin Zamhari. I'm the executive director of Texas Cannabis Collective. We're a nonprofit, all volunteer-based nonprofit here in Texas. We've been doing a lot of reform and advocacy work, but more specifically towards the legislative session we've been engaged in now for, the last 8 months. You can find us at txcanico.com. Really stay up to date with what we're doing. You can find us on Instagram at TX Cannabis Collective. You can find us on Twitter, where we're blossoming a really new audience on Twitter, Twitter X at TX Canico. So follow us along, and you'll kind of stay up to date with the ins and outs of what's happening in Texas cannabis.
Yeah, and thank you for joining again. Tell us what is the latest on this Friday. It is August 29th, 2025. What's going on in Texas?
Well, I mean, we are now currently in our second legislative session, technically supposed to go, or is allowed to go as long as September 13th. And, in the regular session, in the last legislative session, and even in this one, the Senate has rapidly passed a total hemp ban bill, total THC ban bill. And now currently it's sitting, it was referred weeks ago to the Public Health Committee, and has been sitting in Public Health for a while. And literally all of the legislation, there's all this legislation that's been moving nonstop during the second special session, except for the hemp stuff. So really the update is there's not a whole lot of an update, other than it was really good to see our allies and partners at the Texas Hemp Business Council getting a face-to-face with Governor Abbott. And so that was kind of a monumental picture. I think that a lot of people were like, oh, okay, the governor really is looking at both sides of this issue. And so, we're pretty confident that even if a ban bill was going to go through the legislature again, that the governor would once again exercise his veto power, because it did not fall in line with his proclamation. So I think that not even rumor, Dan Patrick himself says they want to be out of there by next Wednesday. They've already said goodbye to a senator, a longtime serving Senator Birdwell. So his final day on the Senate floor was a couple of days ago. So it looks like they are very, very close to ending the legislative session as early as next Wednesday. The House and the Senate have both recessed for 4 days for the entire Labor Day weekend. I think everybody's ready to wrap some stuff up. They got their big redistricting win, and a few other small wins in there. So I think that they're just going to finish up on the flood stuff, shut her down, and we'll see if the governor calls a third special session. Could something on the hemp side pop up in those 2 days? Or could it extend a little bit longer? Absolutely. Nothing's off the table yet. Nobody's spiking footballs or anything like that right now. But it does look very promising that the hemp ban in Texas, for all intents and purposes, is dead.
Yeah, and like you said, I actually had that prepared to pull up that photo of Governor Abbott with some hemp businesses that some people may recognize. I think this gentleman right here that I've got my mouse on is actually the person behind the company where your Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick threw the snacks of, right?
Yeah, that's Lucas Gilkey. He's the CEO of Hometown Hero. Also pictured, you'll see Cynthia Cabrera. She's legal counsel for Hometown Hero as well. Mark Bordas on the far right. That's one of my homies. That guy is that dude is killing it in the Capitol, in the hallways. A lot of admiration for this team. A lot of communication between our two organizations. A lot of collaboration.
But we're back. And but like I say, just before we go, I thought this was really notable to see this photo. Before we lost you, you were talking about these figures and sort of the work that they've put in. And I just think it's really notable to see, and we've had some of these people on our show that are opposed to hemp, including Luke from SAM, including Aubrey Adams from a different prohibitionist organization. They all have been sort of sharing this photo and saying, look, the grieving families have been trying to meet with the governor, but the governor instead chooses to meet with drug dealers. I thought this was just a notable photo to see, given what I've heard from that other side of the aisle, and you can even see what they're saying here on the side of the screens. So definitely thought this photo was notable.
It's going to go. It's a historic photo for, it's really all I can say about it. There had been other hemp groups that had silently met with Governor Abbott behind the scenes as well. So already kind of had a general idea that the governor was friendly toward the hemp space. And this photo kind of solidified that all the more, which is why I'm, not surprised to see that the hemp ban not move at all. We can just assume that the governor may have had something to do with that, because we already know he was going to veto another hemp ban. So why even go through the legislative legwork to, get everybody all hyped up and mad and all of that? Again, this is a nuclear issue. Nobody wants to touch it in the House, that's for sure. And so I think the best thing that we can do is either we're going to have another special session and address it. That is 50-50. We don't know. Or we're going to come back to this in 2027. And in the meantime, Governor Abbott will likely direct DSHS to ramp up its regulatory infrastructure to, in the interim right now, handle this $1 billion hemp market. So that's kind of where we're at.
Gotcha. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing our next steps. Let's keep in touch, and it'll be interesting to see if another legislative session wraps without action on hemp. And like you say, if that means if a third special session is called, or if they just kind of let it ride for a little bit. We'll keep in touch, whatever the case may be, though. So, Austin, I want to thank you for stopping by today. And any parting words, or you just want to say peace out?
No, man. One love. Peace out.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we are back, and yes, that particular interview was pre-recorded. We are back to being live, and to prove that, I will acknowledge some comments before we segue to our next subject, which is rescheduling of cannabis at a federal level. Genetic Memory Farm says, I would never rely on Texas to do anything reasonable or rational. That's funny. Genetic Memory Farms also says the Texas Senate did pass it, so somebody wants it. Definitely Republicans in Texas. They've, as we've showed clips on in the past, they say things like this.
Let's be clear. No social good comes from the legalization of intoxicants. These substances are not medicine. They are psychosis-inducing, overdose-prone chemicals masquerading as relief.
So they have, attitudes like that. They also believe things like this.
I do believe that is the right way to do it, that you do it, but you do it through prescription. You use it as a drug. It's a safe drug when used with a doctor.
So they don't want self-medication, if that wasn't spelled out correctly, clearly enough.
And that this has been a remedy for them. So I just want us to
Well, I want them to continue to have access to the remedy. I want it to be part of a treatment plan that actually lessens the risk of adverse outcomes, including suicide, which we can do a much better job of that. Self-medication is not a mechanism for long-term improvement in mental health conditions.
And what the veterans have, the ones that have been dependent on these products have said is that Texas trusted us with sophisticated weapon systems worth billions of dollars to defend American freedoms abroad. Shouldn't lawmakers trust us to make responsible choices about our own health care at home?
So it's a weird debate here in Texas because they seem to be siding with the idea of medical cannabis, but at the same time, they don't seem to be siding with the traditional sense of medical cannabis, which very much is, I think, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it is self-medication. It's plant medicine. People don't, I'm not saying that dosages can't be recommended. I think there's a place for all of that. I'm just saying that it seems like for the entirety of cannabis, medical cannabis, the concept of it, it's you're given a medical card, you go to the dispensary, you're presented with a wall of products, and you find the ones that work for you, or you grow your own, or whatever the case may be. And there's no standardization. There is no prescription per se, like there is with other pharmaceutical drugs, where you're given a specific amount, a specific dosage, and that seems to be the form factor they'd like this to fall into. They'd like to follow it. They'd like for it to fall into like sort of a controlled substances category, versus what I think we're all shooting for, which is sort of that tomato model, deschedule the plant. And, there was a comment made earlier by, I think, also our friend Genetic Memory Farms, and I don't remember what this was specifically in relation to, but they're saying trying to draw an equivalence to alcohol is what causes all of these problems. It makes people think it's appropriate to have regulations like alcohol and not like tomatoes or chamomile tea. I personally try to equate cannabis to alcohol in the sense that I think cannabis should at the very least be descheduled like alcohol is. But that's really where my comparison or equivalence stops. Oh, and you commented, you said, again, we need to stop with the alcohol equivalence. Is it medicine, or do we want it to be tomatoes? Because I do not want it to be alcohol 2.0, and no one wants Eli Lilly and GSK and cannabis. I personally think this is not a binary question. I think that it can be all of the above. I think it can be medicine. I think it can be like tomatoes. I honestly just look at this as a civil rights issue. This is a plant, and I should be able to possess it. I should be able to do whatever I want with it. I should be able to cultivate it. I should be able to light it on fire and inhale it. And I acknowledge its medical utility. I don't want you to take that the wrong way. But that's where I start to, if I make any equations to alcohol or analogies, that's where it starts and stops, I guess is what I'm trying to say from that civil liberty focus. Because I personally, I think there's room for pharmaceutical solutions too, just like, there's Epidiolex and Marinol. I think there's a place for that. But I think there should always be a place for good old-fashioned cannabis. And that's what I will say about that. Yeah, legalize tomatoes. So this all sort of relates to our next segment, which will be about the rescheduling of cannabis at a federal level. Folks, let's get into it and maybe continue that conversation we just started right here on the Cole Memo. All right, folks. So in case you did not know, the Biden administration kicked off the marijuana rescheduling process in October of 2022 when President Barack Obama, I meant to say when President Biden directed federal agencies to review cannabis's status under the Controlled Substances Act. Let's just speaking of Barack Obama and President Biden and their administration, let's take a moment really quick, a brief departure from rescheduling to acknowledge that today, August 29th, in 2013 was when the Cole Memo was signed into, I don't want to say law, but it was released. The memorandum was released. So in case you didn't know why the show is called the Cole Memo, it's not because my name is Cole. It's because it's something that happened during the Obama administration, the Obama era, if you will, and look into it. I just wanted to acknowledge that today is technically the anniversary, as highlighted by Tom Angel from marijuanamoment.com. This happened in August 29th, 2013, and essentially was the federal government saying, hey, Colorado, Washington, you can do your adult use cannabis. We'll take a hands-off approach as long as you conform to these 8 standards outlined in the Cole Memo. Okay, anyways, just to recap, the Biden administration kicked off the marijuana rescheduling process in October of 2022 when President Biden directed federal agencies to review cannabis's status under the Controlled Substances Act. Once again, alcohol and tobacco are not on the controlled substances list. They are descheduled substances. Just for context there. The Department of Health and Human Services later recommended moving it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, a shift that would ease research barriers and some criminal. Actually, it would only ease research barriers from what I understand. And that's potentially, I think, also the biggest potential outcome, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment, is the idea that businesses would be able to make traditional tax deductions. So that has, since that recommendation, the process has stalled with little public movement until recently. We'll look at this small interaction that you may have seen reported. We, like I said, have been a little bit behind. This interaction between President Donald Trump and the press has sort of put wind back in the sails with regard to the rescheduling of cannabis. It's been the talk of the town lately, and it's all a result of this moment between President Donald Trump and the press. Let's watch.
Any other questions, sir? There is reporting that the administration is going to reclassify marijuana. Would that send mixed messages that if marijuana is okay, some drugs are okay, but we're trying to clean up crime? How do they go hand in hand?
We're only looking at that. That's early, but somebody reported it, which is fine. We're looking at it. Some people like it. Some people hate it. Some people hate the whole concept of marijuana because if it does bad for the children, it does bad for people that are older than children. But we're looking at reclassification, and we'll make a determination over the next few weeks. And that determination hopefully will be the right one. It's a very complicated subject, the subject of marijuana. I've heard great things having to do with medical, and I've had bad things having to do with just about everything else. But medical and, for pain and various things, I've heard some pretty good things. But for other things, I've heard some pretty bad things. The other part of your question,
So he says he's heard some good things about medical, but with regard to anything else, he's heard some bad things. But it sounds like they're going to make a decision based on that statement within the next few weeks. Which that was about 2 weeks ago at this point. 2 weeks ago from Tuesday, the 26th. So I believe that happened on August 12th. And so, it's just over a couple of weeks. So if you were to ask me, and I think somebody commented earlier, when do I think the decision is going to be made? I don't know. I guess next week, probably. But that's if they stick to their word of the next few weeks. Let's not forget that they've said since the very beginning that this presidential administration has said that they would be like open and transparent about the Epstein documents. And that hasn't happened. So, I am taking all of their words for what they're worth, and I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not sure when or if it's going to happen. I will say that there's been a lot of noise on social media lately, where people were speculating that it was going to happen today. A lot of people were speculating that it was going to happen today. Unless I missed something, I don't know, Google folks, did it happen while we were live? From what I understand, it has not happened. Oh, wait a minute. It just I'm joking. No, but literally, I just refreshed my Twitter, and there is a person on Twitter saying, Well, they're saying sort of the opposite of what I just said. They're saying we received no reliable intel. I guess I wasn't saying it was reliable intel. I was just saying there's a lot of chatter online. This person, their name is Anthony Martinelli. I believe they're the founder and editor-in-chief of the marijuanaherald.com. They said, we received no reliable intel that a rescheduling announcement was definitely coming today, despite persistent rumors. That's what I was talking about. So apparently they've also seen the rumors I was seeing, only that it would happen this week or next week. Oh, so he's actually saying that it may. So Chris, to your question, it may happen this week or next week. He said, if there's no announcement by next Friday, which I find unlikely, then I'd be concerned the decision was delayed. That's Anthony Martinelli from the marijuanaherald.com. So I don't know. I'm just interested to see what comes out of this. I obviously am a deschedule person. I don't mean to say obviously. If you didn't know that about me, I think cannabis should be descheduled. But it seems like what they're looking at as a first step is rescheduling. So let's take a look at some of the reactions. The Chicago Sun-Times recently reported on this. I'm putting their report on screen right now. We'll have it linked in the show notes. Cannabis industry leaders in Chicago hope President Donald Trump keeps his word after recently saying that his administration was looking at reclassifying marijuana as a less dangerous drug. The report indicated that cannabis programs as they exist today would remain illegal under federal law. The report highlights that shifting marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug would remove a heavy tax burden on weed companies. Tiffany Chappell Ingram, executive director of the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois, said, our hope is that this administration finds the courage and leadership to act where others have failed, end quote. So for background, the report details the federal government has classified marijuana or cannabis as a Schedule 1 drug since 1970, when the Controlled Substances Act was signed into law. The Drug Enforcement Administration defines Schedule 1 drugs as highly addictive and having no medical use. The report also details that, quote, not all groups support shifting cannabis to Schedule 3. Kevin Sabet, president of the national organization Smart Approaches to Marijuana, said the change could lead to more crime, and he said he worries about the drug's potential negative effects. Folks, I recently had somebody that works alongside this guy, Kevin Sabet, on the show. If you'd like to check that out, you can reference the show notes. It's the episode with Luke, who opposes rescheduling. You can also go to colememo.com/Sam. It looks like in this report, which I've got on screen right now, he's saying rescheduling will roll out a giant welcome mat to all the dangerous criminal elements this administration is trying to stop. The president should reconsider that no major law enforcement, he said, the president should consider that no major law enforcement association supports scheduling marijuana down to 3 because it is a public safety and public health nightmare. That's Kevin Sabet's quote and stance on cannabis rescheduling. Once again, folks, we're live right now. So if you haven't yet, comment below. Do you think Schedule 3 is a good start? Do you think it's going to be rescheduled to Schedule 3? Would you prefer descheduling? I even saw a rumor online today that suggested that perhaps they would reschedule to Schedule 2. What do you think about that? Please comment below. I'm curious what you think. Here's the thing, folks. There are things in this report that concern me. And we'll get to that in a moment, just as an advocate. But let's keep it straight here for a moment. As we said earlier, from what I can gather, the most notable change that rescheduling would bring is that cannabis companies would no longer have that 280E tax burden. So as the report says, it would remove a tax burden that prohibits them from reporting ordinary business expense deductions from their taxable income. So that, according to a chief executive of the cannabis market research firm BDSA, companies could see up to $1 billion in savings by paying less in taxes. So, you know, honestly, that's how the companies, I think, seem to be looking at this. There's a lot of talk about research and how it would ease burdens for creating, Schedule 3 drugs. I don't think these cannabis companies, and I don't mean to speak for all of them or paint with a broad brush, but complying with creating a drug that would be approved as a Schedule 3, like, I don't know. I just don't get the sense that it's as simple as their current business model. But these are the things that remain to be seen. This is why I think it's going to be interesting to watch all of this play out. Christopher Brady says anything but Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is the most inappropriate categorization. Christopher Brady says make alcohol Schedule 1. I don't know if I agree with that last comment, but I appreciate you commenting. It's always nice to have other people's thoughts and keep them coming, folks. I appreciate all of the comments. Drop them below. The report detailed that Tiffany Chappell Ingram, which, like I think I mentioned earlier, is from Cannabis Business Association of Illinois. Also, I think notable to mention that Tiffany used to work with the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office, from what I understand. So, yeah, she used to actually regulate or work with the cannabis regulators for the state. Said that taking advantage of this tax treatment would, quote, go a long way, end quote, for cannabis businesses and for improving conditions in the industry, quote, especially in Illinois, where cannabis license holders face high taxes and regulatory burdens, end quote. Ingram was quoted as saying rescheduling would also ease some restrictions on cannabis research and banking, including opening access to traditional lines of financing and the ability to raise capital. So that's the one thing that remains unclear to me. Will it actually change anything with banking? I've heard different opinions on this. That yes, it would take away that 280E tax burden, but no, it would not mean that you could bank your cannabis money. It would not mean, I guess, that you could accept credit cards, for example. But I don't know. King Terps asks, do you think rescheduling will impact the requirements regarding pre-employment testing? I know a lot of companies do it purely for insurance purposes, especially in construction. I think that's a hard question to answer because, like in the state of Illinois, for example, the state law specifically says that companies can continue to preclude you or I guess use cannabis as a reason to not continue to employ somebody, from what I understand. So it's hard to answer that question. I think depending on if you are actually prescribed a cannabis-based medicine, that's when you might see that type of thing go away. I really think that the testing thing is really complicated. If you missed it, we did a segment on UIC Chicago. And sort of setting aside what went on at that lab, it just is, cannabis seems to be a complicated substance to test for. And they say, so lame, looking for a new position because I'm tired of my current role and have to take a break for probably 3 months. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's a unfortunate place to be in. It's really unfortunate that as a country, we've just seemingly all agreed to hand over our biological samples and let companies know what we're doing in our personal time. My thing has always been, like, if you're too intoxicated to work, it's going to be obvious. Shouldn't need a test to prove it, but that's just me. That's just my commentary. Continuing with thoughts on cannabis rescheduling from those that are in the industry. George Archos, chief executive of Verano, one of the larger cannabis operators based in Chicago, said the company was encouraged. The Trump administration was reviewing cannabis reclassification. He said the move would be the, quote, first critical step at the federal level, end quote, to pave the way for further medical research and remove the, quote, onerous restrictions that inhibit the industry's growth. The report also detailed that George Archos provided a statement that said, quote, we hope to see the administration take decisive action to reschedule cannabis and finally allow America's next great homegrown industry to reach its full potential by serving patients, creating jobs, unlocking economic growth, and reversing the decades of harmful prohibitionist policies. So that was a statement by George Archos. And yeah, I mean, look, it's not that this doesn't sound good. I'm not trying to be like a contrarian. I just don't see how this industry fits into a Schedule 3 framework. But, we also never thought we'd see a Schedule 1 drug sold over the counter the way that it is, and allowing people to cultivate a Schedule 1 drug the way that we are in the limited forms that we are. But here we are. So, I don't know. Crazy things happen. Okay, here was the part that I thought would stand out to my listeners. Let's take a look. This section is called Medicinal Rebirth. And I just thought this was definitely notable for my listeners. Classifying marijuana as a Schedule 3 drug would be the next step in standardizing medicinal cannabis use and putting it on par with other accepted drugs. Jordan Tritt, once again, the executive of the cannabis market research firm BDSA, said. Industry leaders say the federal government would finally be recognizing the plant for the medicinal value it serves to the millions of Americans who use it to treat a variety of conditions such as chronic pain, anxiety, epilepsy, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Tritt said, and this is around the part that I thought would perk your ears, that the formal recognition could sprout more meaningful medicinal use, whereas in the past, medical legalization in states was seen as a gateway to legalizing recreational use. He said in a quote, I think the medical side of cannabis is going to see like a big rebirth, and that fits in with insurance coverage and education with the physicians and medical community. But I think that's something that very, very few brands and companies are as a whole paying attention to and focused on. So I just thought that was really, really interesting. And sorry, I trailed off on that quote. He's basically saying that very, very few brands and companies are as a whole paying attention to and focusing on the health and wellness category, which is sort of what I was saying earlier. These companies seem to be, and again, I'm not trying to paint with too broad of a brush. I'm sure there's somebody watching right now and they're like, man, the shop that I go to, they have the best recommendations. They embody the spirit of the spirit of medical cannabis, and I have no complaints, and you couldn't take me to a better store if you wanted to. I hope that there's somebody out there like that, but I've been to better stores, I've been to bad stores too, and I guess my thing is there's no, I don't know. I just thought that would catch your attention. Again, just the idea that, especially when we're talking about pharmaceuticals and prescriptions and insurance coverage, like I'm not saying that I'm opposed to insurance coverage. Like I think that there should be ways people should be able to grow up as much cannabis as they want. It should be given out for free, just like we do with tomatoes, right? That's the perfect world. I guess I'm not opposed to insurance covering it, but it just gets really complicated really quick. And I worry about all the red tape that comes when you get into that area. And I just wish that we could just simply start with descheduling the cannabis plant. And if people want to do other things with the cannabis plant, they can. But at the bare minimum, I think we should all have the right to grow, possess, and use as much as we want, need, or please. Again, there's been sort of a dust up these last few days on rescheduling. Those were some perspectives of people sort of in the industry. I want to play a clip that I recently heard, including some of the some industry perspectives. Here's the clip.
Let's hear some more about the impact on the consumer, because like with the reclassification, how would that impact sort of the cost of these cannabis products? You started to talk about that, Akili. And then that trickle down potentially to consumers, because that's what people want to know. Is this going to cost me less, more? Is this a good thing? Should I be happy here?
Mm-hmm. Well, to the extent that it takes pressures off the business, we might have flexibility to lower prices. I'm not sure that it directly impacts those, because the reason things are so expensive in Illinois is partially because the state taxes are just so enormously high.
Yeah.
And so that's really a state issue to act on.
Tiffany?
No, I think just adding on to Akili, I think that's right. And particularly in Illinois, we have some of the highest taxes in the state. I call it being in between the M&Ms of Missouri and Michigan. So
Okay.
we have a lot of carpetbaggers that go to New Buffalo, Michigan, to get cheaper cannabis, but that's in part due to how we're taxed. The other thing that's actually challenging the industry is the existential threat of sort of the federal loophole that, you know, many operators that are outside of the license industry, the intoxicating hemp industry. It's a loophole created by the 2018 Farm Bill, where you have consumers that are confused about, am I going into a real dispensary or am I going into a smoke shop that's holding itself up to be a dispensary? So that's another problem that the federal government had attempted to deal with recently, but has not yet.
Yeah, so no resolution on that?
No.
Just yet. Well, what is the current environment like for the person listening who does?
So Slonomite comments, carpetbaggers? Really? Yeah, what do you guys think about the use of that phrase? I don't know if I know if there would be a modern way to use that term. Carpetbaggers meaning. Let's just do a little bit of Googling here. But before we do that, please, folks, let me know what you think about the use of that phrase and if that was what that means. What does that even mean? You're saying I'm going to Michigan to get access to a more variety of product at a cheaper price and I'm carpetbagging? I'll have to Google that here in a second. I don't even know what that means. But today and yesterday, so there's been a lot, like I said, there's been a lot of chatter around rescheduling. And I think one of the things I've been seeing shared, and I don't understand exactly how this happened, but apparently somebody shared a live stream that looked like this, what you're seeing on screen right now, with some people that are pretty notable within the community. And they started sharing it. And people thought, I think this is where the rescheduling to Schedule 2 rumor came from. Again, it's very unclear to me, but apparently Bloomberg just posted it. And so I wanted to sort of acknowledge this as well. Again, I'm a little bit unclear as to, there's just been a lot of chatter. So it's hard to really gauge what exactly is happening. I'm just trying to share with you everything I'm seeing as it's happening. Because I find it all interesting. So in case you're wondering, why there's so much chatter lately. So let's Google carpetbaggers because I don't know. So carpetbagger, I put carpetbaggers meaning a political candidate who seeks election in an area where they have no local connections. Historically, it means a person from the northern states who went to the South after the Civil War to profit from Reconstruction. And, maybe this is what it's meant to mean. A person perceived as an unscrupulous opportunist. Unscrupulous opportunist. Having or showing no moral principles, not honest or fair. And a person who exploits. Interesting. Slonomite says carpetbagger is when you move to a different state to run for elective office. Oh yeah, that's what it said. The first thing, a political candidate who seeks election. Maybe they did not mean to use that term. Maybe they meant to use tax avoiders or something like that, because they were talking about people that go to Michigan for the lower taxes or the lower prices, because the taxes are actually just about the same. If you look at it, people with medical cards in Illinois choose to go to Michigan and they don't even have a tax. I think it's like 1%. You pay like a penny for a transaction, and they're still going to Michigan. It's that the prices are lower. The prices are lower before taxes. And I've had people on from companies in this state where I'm like, you have this product for sale at a dispensary here in Illinois. At the time, it was like $120 for one of them. That same exact product on sale in Michigan for $30 on the adult use side. I was getting it for $120 as a medical patient. Meanwhile, I could go to Michigan via adult use and get the same product for $30 a pop. And it's a difference in market dynamics. But it's really unfortunate. And I guess, yeah, I'm just trying to say that taxes could be lowered. And we discussed that on the show with economist Bo Whitney. I'll show you how to find that episode on screen right now. If you go to colememo.com and look up Bo, if I spell it right, Whitney, up in the top right-hand corner, it's episode 216, and he talks about how he advised the governor's office here in Illinois to lower taxes, and that by doing so, we could actually bring in more revenue. And they ultimately didn't agree to that. I think all they heard was lower taxes. No, we need this revenue. So folks, we got 56, a little bit over 50, looks like 56 people tuned into the stream. Drop your comments, hit that like button. We're talking about rescheduling cannabis right now. And to keep the ball moving, I'm going to show you, we mentioned them already, Jordan Davidson, who's been on this show more than a handful of times, went to the White House on August 14th, which was shortly after the rescheduling announcement was made. I think it's important to mention this because, well, people that don't believe that cannabis should be legal at all are going to the White House. According to their posts, they say great meeting at the White House today, and there they seem to be. I can't tell you where in the White House that is, but I just think that's really notable to mention, I mean to say. And I'm curious, like I say, what do you think about rescheduling? Comment below. It sounds like I would think it's going to be within the next week or so, but you never know. I'll believe it when I see it. Who knows what it's going to look like? That's what I think I find most interesting. Some of these people that talk about it online are like, well, the dispensaries are going to get a Schedule 3 license from the DEA. And I'm just like, I don't think that's going to happen, but we shall see. We shall see. Folks, we're going to keep everything rolling right here in the Cole Memo. If you haven't already, subscribe. You can subscribe to our show at colememo.com/subscribe. You'll get notifications via your email inbox. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, which is, we've shared some of the stories that we're going over in today's broadcast on Twitter like weeks ago. So if you follow us on social media, that's a great way to sort of stay in the loop. And I guess I did have one last thought here. I thought this part of that clip was notable.
We're only looking at that. That's early, but somebody reported it, which is fine. We're looking at it. Some people like it.
When he says, somebody reported it, which is fine. I've seen some speculation online. I believe Brian Dombrowski is the person I've seen say this theory that that's an indication of him. It's actually not fine. He's actually a little bit maybe perturbed, upset. I don't know if that's the correct use of the word perturbed. He's upset that news broke and it's not fine. And I thought that read on the situation, when I saw this happen, I was like, that seems weird the way that he said that. And Brian seems to agree. I've seen his speculation online that Trump actually is a little bit upset that this news broke the way that it did. Which, if you didn't know, I believe there was a Forbes article the weekend before. I believe this happened on a Monday, perhaps. Maybe it was a Tuesday. But this Forbes article said, he's considering reclassifying was a bunch of media pressure, and that's sort of how I believe that interaction ultimately ended up taking place. We're going to keep it moving right here on the Cole Memo. I'll be right back. Oh, and to be clear, on my last segment, I saw a commenter said Trump is a Nazi, so I don't care if he is upset. Screw him. I'm not saying I care whether or not he's upset. I'm saying that if you paid however much for a plated dinner, millions of dollars, billions of dollars for a plated dinner, and you're banking on him passing rescheduling to deliver you some tax relief. You may be fearful that you perhaps overplayed your hand by leaking data to the media to sort of mount extra pressure. So I am not worried about the fact that he's upset, because I don't necessarily want rescheduling to be the outcome. I wouldn't necessarily complain about it, I guess. Like I say, I'd like to see what it actually means. But my ideal end goal is descheduling. And so I don't really care if he's upset either. I'm just trying to share with you my read on the situation. And we're going to keep things rolling going into our next topic, which has to do with something that I am passionate about. If you didn't already know, I've made a mini documentary sort of on this topic, the continued criminalization of cannabis in Illinois. You can watch that now at colememo.com/minidoc. So here we go. The headline is ATF and ISP SWAT teams seize 9 pounds of suspected cannabis during Love's Park raid. And I believe I saw the folks at the Elevated News podcast cover this story. I could be wrong, but I always like to give people credit where that's due. I don't think this subject gets covered enough. And so apparently on August 12th, police, ATF, ISP, what is this? I don't know. It's saying, okay, sorry. My computer was saying something to me. I apologize for the pause there, folks. ISP, SWAT, ATF, they all showed up and they found 9 pounds of cannabis, digital scales, and packaging materials during a raid. And apparently those 9 pounds tested positive for THC. This person, Townsend, is charged with manufacturing and delivering cannabis. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty. As we all know, it's really unfortunate that they just throw out your names like this because that does have an effect on you. There is, sort of the concept of trial by internet. And so I hope that this person is granted some sort of reprieve. I think it's wrong that the criminalization of 9 pounds of cannabis is, or the fact that it's even criminalized. I'm pretty sure some people in the medical cannabis program are allotted 9 pounds of cannabis. I can tell you for sure that I know a few friends that have grown at least 9 pounds of cannabis. I've, at this point, maybe perhaps grown 9 pounds of cannabis in total, like in my life, not in like one crop. I'm not that good. So I think it's unfortunate that the criminalization of cannabis continues. And like I said, got a mini documentary on that subject. And if you haven't checked it out yet, please do so. Here's a peek at what that looks like. And I'll be back to close out our show with maybe another topic or two.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st. What should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois, and I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc. All right, folks. So we're going to keep the show rolling. Just wanted to acknowledge our friend Cannabis Critique, who commented and said, I synced it. Yeah, so you can check that out. Thank you, by the way, for checking it out. Cannabis Critique and others. Once again, you can watch it at colememo.com/minidoc. It's free to stream, and I put a lot of work into it. So if you check it out, drop a comment, let me know what you thought. It's just about an hour. If you watch it on double speed, you'll have it done in 30 minutes. I mean, come on. Okay, so this post stood out to me. I have no idea who this person is, but I will read their name for us. Jillian Shower. I hope that I pronounced your name correct. They are a PhD, MPH. They are a doctor, miles per hour. I'm just joking. I don't know what that means, but that's, you can see it on screen. That's their title. They say, it has come to my attention that a cannabis and hemp trade association included my contact information at the bottom of a lobbying document that was circulated around Congress. This was done without my knowledge or permission, and I did not see the document until it was sent to me by people who received it. Cannabis Regulators Association, otherwise known as CANRA, does not lobby and has been very careful in our approach to hemp-derived cannabinoid policy and regulation. We have member states who have legalized it and regulated it. We have member states who have banned it, and we have member states who are in between the two. Our job is not to pick a side, but rather to articulate what the needs are on the ground for regulators to better do their jobs. For example, things like further federal clarity and engagement, a focus on public health and safety, research, etc. Much like federal government agencies, we are available to Congress only in a nonpartisan technical assistance capacity and to connect them with regulators of hemp and cannabis in their state. While I publicly encourage anyone to send elected officials to us so that they can be connected with the government folks doing this work on the ground and in their state or jurisdiction, I do not condone the association of CANRA or of myself personally with any policy position or lobbying document, and am disappointed by this overreach. Somebody is upset. And I say that sort of to be a little bit funny, but also to acknowledge that I have no idea who that person is. Let's click on their name and maybe we can see who they actually even are. I mean, I get the impression there's somebody with CANRA, who, again, if you didn't know, is the Cannabis Regulators Association. I can't view her full profile, apparently. Let's try a little bit of a Google here as we start to wrap up the show. Folks, comment below. What do you think? If you haven't already, smash that like button. Yeah, it looks like Dr. Jillian Shower, hope I'm saying your name right, was named executive director of the Cannabis Regulators Association, which has expanded to 35 member states and territories. That was on September 14th, 2021. So, I don't know. I found that notable. It's always interesting to see like a little bit of drama. You know, that's LinkedIn. Posting stuff like that on LinkedIn, that means you're pretty upset. That's like job Facebook, you know? I don't post nothing on LinkedIn. There's some people that just like treat it like Facebook. Anyways, I'm trying to be funny here. Genetic Memory Farms, thank you. They say, I enjoyed the mini doc a couple of times. Highly recommend. Wow, that means a lot because I also watched it probably hundreds of times because I had to edit it. So the fact that you would take more than once to watch it means a lot. Folks, once again, colememo.com/minidoc. I want to ask a question to the audience that I've not asked in a while. We've got over 60 people listening in right now. What are you smoking on right now? It's Friday. It is Friday, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. There were some topics that I didn't get to. I'll flash them up on screen right now if you want to look in. I'll show you like the headlines. Cannabis Critique says they're smoking on black amber from Legacy, very heavy. Smells like black licorice and sweet flavor. By the way, man, I did not do a good job of announcing it. I announced it at the beginning of the show. I need to do a better job of announcing it throughout live streams because we have over 60 people in. If you want to call in live, you can do it at colememo.com/live. Cannabis Critique did it in the past. It was pretty fun. So if you want to do that, you don't have to turn on your audio. You can just, you got to turn on your audio if you want to call in, but you don't have to turn on your video. And yeah, it's always curious to hear what you think. So feel free to call in if you want to. This headline I'm showing on screen right now. It was written by chicagobusiness.com. The headline is Belly Up Weed Company puts 3 Chicago area shops, massive grow facility up for sale. We didn't get to that today. It's written by Crane's Chicago Business, and looks like it's behind a paywall. So maybe if you haven't read Crane's Chicago Business, you won't. You will not get stopped by that paywall. But anyways, Cannabis Critique says, I tuned in late tonight or I would have called in again. And yeah, sit in silence with the camera on. Exactly. Yeah, that's another article I'd encourage you to check out that has to do with Forefront closing down in Illinois, pretty big company. There's also this, let's make sure this doesn't start going off. I am not an investor, but I find this show to be interesting. I tune into it from time to time. It's called The Dales Report, and they had an episode 9 days ago. And if you watch it, I thought this was really interesting. So I'll try to show you the timestamps here. It looks like from the very beginning of the show, so right about 2:20, 2 minutes and 20 seconds into the show, up to, whoops, didn't mean to go that far. About 30 minutes into the show. Yeah, really goes into it. 35 minutes into the show. It's with a person that I guess is the founder and CEO of the MSOs or MSOS ETF, which is some sort of investing term. I don't know. I just thought all this chatter was interesting. I do have some investments, and if you guys are curious about that, I can definitely talk about that. That's totally open book there. We've talked about it on the show in the past, in fact. But this person, full disclosure, I am not an investor in the MSO ETF, so disclosure there. But anyways, there's been a lot of chatter about that, and as a person that's not interested in finance, I actually did find it pretty interesting. And then there's this interview with Shane Pennington about the potential moves to reschedule mushrooms and cannabis, and how that all sort of goes through the court system. So that looks like it's from like about 39 minutes onward. And like I say, it's from this episode 18 days ago. I'll have it in the show notes if you'd like to check it out. Like I say, I just find some of this stuff sort of interesting. So Genetic Memory Farm says, I think we're seeing the cannabis schedule tree for the civil rights forest fire that is burning around us. We need to go back to our activist roots. Yeah. They also say they're vaping on Vietnamese black and Hawaiian cherry bomb, crossed with C99 from The Rev. All hail the master, David Druid, Michael Page. I'm sure some of the heads know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about here, but you know, that's awesome. Well, all right, folks. If you've been tuned in for this long, you love the show, I appreciate you all. I just wanted to show you, if you are not tuned in live, or if you're tuned in live, this is always helpful to see. Throw this on the screen right now. So if you're watching on YouTube, for example, whoops, you can see where this little bit of an inception thing going on. If you go into the show notes, there is a link that you can click on, and it says read the full show notes here. If you click on that link, it will take you to our website, which, sorry, that comment was sort of hiding some things there. I'll show you this again here. If you look under the video, there's a link that'll take you to the show notes. If you click that, it'll take you to our website, and you can find all of the links that we mentioned. And there's that MSOS interview if you want to see it, the Canra post, the ASP, the ISP ATF raid that we talked about, Jordan Davidson going to the White House. If you wanted to hear that full interview that we played a clip off of earlier, that's here. That article I mentioned earlier, the episode we did with Luke, who opposes legalization. Oh, we didn't talk about this letter to the editor. I think that's a great way to close out the show. We also talked about the fallout for the UIC lab that was accused of providing flawed results in cannabis DUI tests, and how we covered that on the show on episode 97 before I had ever seen it reported anywhere else. Let's close the show with the letter to the editor to the Illinois Times. And this just came across my desk. I thought it was interesting. These are letters to the editor, 8/28/25. I don't know. I've never heard of the Illinois Times until I saw this, but here's a little letter to the editor from somebody named Aaron Graves in Springfield. They say, legal but not good. Not that these are not deserving businesses or good people that own and run them, but these cannabis grants should be seeking to remedy the very town cannabis is destroying, not the opposite. They say city council approves grants August 14th. I'm guessing that this was written about in the Illinois Times, and they're responding via letter to the editor. So they continue in their statement saying, the youth of Springfield are being engulfed in a cloud of marijuana, literally, as children come piling out of their parents' cars smelling of it in the car drop-off line at school. We have kids constantly attempting to get high at school all day. From 5th grade on up, and they think it's normal because it's legal. Really? You got kids in 5th grade trying to get high at school all day? They continue in their statement saying, legalization and taxation of things we know are not good for our community will not improve it in the long term. It only pads certain wallets and destroys lives in the process. Let's look harder to positively change the entire community, not based on addiction. Once again, that's Aaron Graves in Springfield. Aaron, if for some reason you find yourself listening to this podcast, I'd love to have you on. I like talking to people like you. I don't know why. So I put this in the description, but people that comment on Instagram, I don't see your comments until like a point like this when I actually pull up Instagram and take a look. And I do apologize. I try to make it more clear that I can't see the comments immediately. But somebody recently commented and said, I recently got a ticket for having weed in a childproof jar in a backpack. The cop told me the law was you're supposed to keep it in your trunk only. I can't find any law saying that. Am I mistaken? You're not mistaken. They're mistaken. It says that it can't be in reach of the driver or the passenger. I can't remember the exact language, to be completely honest, but the trunk is, I would say, the safest way, but I don't believe that the law says that, just to be very clear to our commenter that asked that question. The law doesn't say it must be in the trunk. Not all cars have a trunk. It's got to be inaccessible, I think is the word. we can take a look. I think this is a good learning opportunity. I'm not a legal professional, but just if you're wondering how to browse the law, we'll go to CRTA Illinois. I'll put this on the screen really quick, and we will start to close out the show. I googled CRTA Illinois. Side note: the Illinois website looks new, if you can tell. Sorry, guys. Maybe you can't tell, but I can tell because I go to the Illinois General Assembly's website, and it looks new. So if you click View Entire Act, you'll be able to see that. And is this the entire act? Yes, this is the entire act. So what we're going to look up, we're going to do a Control F, and we're going to look up inaccessible. So cannabis in a vehicle not open to the public unless the cannabis is in a reasonably secured, sealed, or resealable container and reasonably inaccessible while the vehicle is moving. So that's the language that I see. But again, I'm not giving any legal advice here. I'm just sharing what the law says since somebody was asking about it. So folks, hope you found value in this episode of the Cole Memo. If you did, once again, please drop your comments below after the show. Apparently that helps. We have over 70 viewers in total, which is pretty cool. So thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that like button, share this with your friends. If you've enjoyed the show, check out my mini documentary at colememo.com/minidoc. And yeah, I think we'll just end the show like that, folks. Happy Friday. I hope you had a great week. And yeah, I hope that you have a great weekend. I guess it's Labor Day on Monday, so enjoy that if you have that off. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Cole Memo. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And again, take care.